Hello, thank you for joining today's webinar, Exploring FLA and Insider's Look. I'm Scott Jones, the CEO of Forest Landowners Association, and today we're going to go through a little bit of the history of FLA, why we're here, some background of the association, some of the work that we do at the association, and ways you as a member can get more involved and engaged with the association, and also get to hear directly from the team members here at Forest Landowners Association and the foundation who work on these projects and these initiatives every single day on behalf of private forest landowners across the country. So to start off and jump right in, there's always the idea of why did we begin as an organization and why did we start as an association? And it goes back to the early days of the 1940s and 1941. And really at this time, we had a changing use of our forest happening. We were moving away from turpentine and naval stores in the southeastern US to growing wood for fiber supply, for paper products, and a growing nation. And at that time, one of our founders, Bill Ottmeyer, went up to Congress and to ask for money appropriations to learn how to do research so we could learn how to grow and manage forests better for fiber supply. And what he learned really quickly is when you're up there representing yourself, you don't get a lot of traction. When you get a lot of traction is when you're representing multiple people and you have a broad base of support. So he saw the need to form an organization where we could have grassroots impact from landowners and grassroots voices and harness those voices of private landowners across the country in order to get what landowners needed to be successful. So we were founded in 1941, and we were founded by a small group of landowners called the Forest Farmers Association, of course, to leverage that voice of the landowners so that we could be successful in asking for what we need as landowners across the country. The vision we have at the association really encompasses what we were doing then and today. And it's really for forest landowners to be recognized or acknowledged for all the economic and environmental contributions that we provide society. And we really believe if you can accomplish this vision, then private forest landowners would not only be supported, but celebrated for everything that we do across our properties. Of course, a vision is a big statement or a perfect world statement, and it really drills down tighter into the mission of the organization. And the mission is really to help ensure this expanding economic climate that enables America's forest landowners to prosper. And that's so important. And you know, I talk to groups all the time about how do we help landowners and how do we ensure success of landowners. And it's really, I sum it up in really one word, it's certainty. Now, certainty gets played out in a lot of different ways, but the number one way is economic certainty. If we have economic certainty, then when we're putting that tree in the ground today and we're waiting 15, 30, 45, 60 years to monetize that investment, you have to have certainty, or else the investment you're making is going to always be in question. So how do we create certainty, basically economic certainty for private forest landowners to know that the investment they're making today on their land by growing trees on their land is going to be successful and the right investment going forward? And it's really right here on the right-hand side of your screen. Everything we do begins in protecting private property rights. That's fundamental to all the work that we do, because without respecting and protecting private property rights in this country, the whole system of private forest land ownership kind of falls apart. We do this by promoting open and robust markets. You're going to hear more about that from Michelle in a minute and how we work on that. And also regulatory stability. And you'll see that we don't have like, we don't say is we don't need regulation. Regulation is needed. You know, we want clean water, we want clean air, we want wildlife habitat for endangered species and for game species, but there has to be stability. And stability, you could very well use the word certainty also. You need to know what the regulatory climate is going to look like so that you have freedom of operation on your properties. And also fair and certain taxation. As the tax code has moved around, we really have to make sure that we stay steady. We need to know that the climate that we're investing in today, that tax structure is going to be the same or better, more beneficial when it's time to monetize our investment. So those are the areas that we really play out our mission at the association. But really, what makes us unique as an organization is really that we are looking after the private forest landowner first. And when I talk to groups about sustaining forests, they say, well, what do you do at Forest Landowners Association? How does your work benefit, the nation, the environment, the economy, rural America overall? It's really this unique perspective and focus that we have on the private forest landowner first. So a lot of people talk about protecting forests and protecting trees and protecting ecosystems and biodiversity. And all that starts in America, in this country, since over half of the forests in our country are privately owned. The working forests that are creating fiber supply and creating conservation benefits at scale are almost all private forest landowners. And if we don't start with the private forest landowner first, then we can't hope to sustain them. If the private forest landowner is incentivized economically to continue growing trees, to continue managing forests, and the next generation sees it as a good business, then we in turn sustain forest in this country. But it has to start with the private forest landowner first. So beginning with the right perspective and the right foundation helps ensure that we have forests for the future. So this is where our work starts. But today, this is what Forest Landowners Association looks like. When we were founded, it was just a handful, a few dozen landowners in the southeastern U.S. Today, we've grown to almost every state in the country, 44 states, 55 million acres of forest land in the organization. We have landowners who are in their fifth and sixth generation. We have landowners who are in their first generation. But we really represent all of those landowners. And they can be from the smaller ones to the very largest that we have in this country. But that's who we look like. That's what we look like today. But what's unique and similar to about all of these landowners is they all have the same goal in mind. And we'll show you a little snapshot of what some of our members look like. And these are members. These are, of course, not all of our members. This is just a little snapshot of some of the members that we have. But what you'll see up at the top right, members like Green Diamond is based out of Seattle. Collins Pine is based out of Wilsonville, Oregon. Congaree River is a South Carolina landowner, but they're based out of Chicago. Claw Forestry at the bottom is in Mississippi. So is Hall Timberlands. WD Cows is in Massachusetts. So these landowners are all over the country, and that's really what we need. You're going to hear a little bit more about that from our government affairs director in just a moment. But to be successful as a grassroots organization, we have to have these members in all parts of the country, because members of Congress, people in the administration, where species listings occur, where we have administrative rulemaking happening that could change the outcome, good or bad, for private forest landowners, that happens across the country. Members of Congress are from all over the country, and leadership changes in Congress. And you don't always have, say, a senator from Georgia running the Senate Ag Committee. Right now, it's Debbie Stabenow from Michigan. So it's important that we have this diverse membership across the country so that we can effectively represent private forest landowners. So that's what drives membership for us. Today, we have almost 2,000 members. You can see represented on the map, kind of in the colors, where those members are located. Of course, Georgia is our home state, our domicile state. We do have a lot of members in the state of Georgia, but that's not by design. That's just the way it's working right now. We do keep a very high member retention rate, which we're very proud of. And we like to say that once people find us, once landowners find us, start learning about the work that we do to ensure their success, their future of their private forest land, we typically keep them. Most nonprofits, say like a Ducks Unlimited or a Wild Turkey Federation, their member retention rate is usually somewhere around 12 to 20%. So we do have a very high member retention rate. We do not churn a lot of members at all. So kind of to sum all of this up is really where our work happens. And We're gonna dive into this about the specifics of this work, but our work really happens with landowners in the middle having healthy markets, economic incentive to continue growing and manage forests, telling your story, which helps ensure freedom of operation and a successful policy agenda, both the administration and legislation, and leveraging that landowner voice in a grassroots manner so that we can tell that story effectively, ensure the future of private forest landowners, and ensure that bad things don't happen and good things do happen. To make it very simply said, so that's where all of our work happens, is the intersection of these really priority areas. And to dive into a little more detail about this work, I'll hand it over to our Director of Government Affairs, Craig Anderson. Craig?
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining. Like Scott said, I'm Craig Anderson, Director of Government Affairs for FLA, and excited to kind of, paint the picture of what our focus is with policy. And to be clear, I've focused on the legislative side of things, and my counterpart, Katie, who will chat with y'all a little bit later, focuses on the regulatory side. And so I've been with FLA this my second year, and really wanted to kind of reconfigure what our focus is when it comes to public policy, because it's very easy to get distracted with the news of the day. The tide can turn very quickly with the focus, and legislators certainly have a very limited focus, but lots of people that are constantly working with them. And so making sure we have a maintained list of what we are trying to make sure we are weighing in on when it comes to advocacy with the legislative branch, but also with the regulators, is very important. And so first and foremost, like Scott was chatting about earlier, is defending private property rights, making sure that landowners have the ability to sustain their operations for generations to come, and that their hands aren't being tied by any legislative or regulatory initiative. Expanding market access. So this focuses both on domestic and international markets, traditional wood markets, new and emerging markets, and even financial markets, making sure that landowners have a financial means to be able to sustain themselves and continue doing the good work they're doing, both economic and environmental. Supporting common sense tax policies. Scott also touched on this a little bit earlier, and tax, very broad, and that's because there's always new initiatives being kicked around. That's something that we try to insulate ourselves with, not only this policy area, but others, because be it with the new administration, the change in leadership for the House or the Senate, taxes always come up, and there's always a focus on that. And we're trying to make sure that we defend policies that do work, but also make sure that we educate and let people know that there are lots of proposals being kicked around that we need to be careful about. So some examples include capital gains, the estate tax, but also others that might not be as familiar, like maintaining like-kind exchanges, and various other initiatives that we are looking out for and advocating on. And finally, a bucket that I wanted to really focus on when I came on board was making sure that legislators know that disaster recovery tools are something that landowners are in dire need for. And so over the next few slides, really going to dive into that, as that has become our primary focus for our government affairs team in recent years. So, natural disasters. Doesn't matter if it's tornadoes, wildfires, hurricanes, pests, disease, hail, you name it, it will impact every single corner of the United States, and thus every private forest landowner. As Scott mentioned, we are looking out for all of our members, and we've identified natural disasters as a threat to all of them, regardless of their region or anything else. Disasters do not know borders, And so it's something that we are keeping a close eye on, especially given that next month will be the start for hurricane season. And something that we have identified is that, unlike others in natural resources or in agriculture as a whole, there just isn't the certainty for private forest landowners that others are able to lean on when times get tough. Federal crop insurance isn't an option for private forest landowners, nor are there safety net programs like ARC or PLC that our members can participate in. At best, there's the hope for ad hoc supplemental appropriations that our members could lean on, but that is not something that gives any sort of certainty. So, what we are trying to do is work with legislators on small steps that can make a large difference when it comes to giving what can be certainty to landowners to continue their operations for generations to come. So, in the next slide, these are two of our policy priorities that we've been working on for the past 2 years. And again, these are to help address the lack of a safety net that landowners have. The first has predated me and has had its name changed, but the message is still the same. The Disaster Reforestation Act is simply correcting the tax code when it comes to making sure that the government recognizes the true value of timber that's destroyed or damaged after a natural disaster. And luckily, this bill has had significant support over the past few years, and certainly one that has had a lot of support this year, both from members of Congress, but also from outside organizations as well. This is a tax policy bill, but it's one that we've been working with the sponsors of the bill, both in the House and the Senate, to find a path forward. We're also very fortunate that the current Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is a steadfast supporter of this as well, something that many groups don't have the luxury of having a speaker supporting one of their key priorities. So very grateful for that. The second bill is called the Emergency Conservation Program Improvement Act. And while it makes changes to ECP, for our audience, it makes significant changes to the Emergency Forest Restoration Program. And for those that aren't as familiar with that program, that was created a little over a decade ago, and it is meant to help landowners after a natural disaster strikes with technical assistance and cleanup that can help with their property. Unfortunately, how the program is right now, it is a reimbursement program. And so this bill that we've worked on with bipartisan members in both the House and the Senate would make it that 75% of the estimated funds could be given upfront to eligible participants, as well as expanding the definition for eligibility so that more people would be able to participate in this program. So this is an example of one of the many handouts that we use when we're interacting with members of Congress, be it with our board meetings, when we have our fly-in in February, or when me, Scott, and others are interacting with members of Congress and their staff on a regular basis, letting them know what the current situation is for landowners, letting them know that there's an inequity that we just need corrected, because many people don't recognize that this was simply an oversight and a lack of input, frankly, from private forest landowners in the past when this tax code was drafted decades ago. And so we're very fortunate that we have bipartisan supporters in both the House and the Senate, with Senator Cassidy from Louisiana and Senator Warnock from Georgia leading in the Senate, and Congressman Carter from Georgia and Congresswoman Sewell from Alabama leading the House initiative. And so as this is a tax bill, we certainly have been focused on members that are on the committees of jurisdiction. But at some point, you have to also get creative with options to move this forward. And a large part of that has been growing supporters of this bill, not only within Congress, but also outside organizations. And so this list is actually dated, but you'll notice that these are state forestry associations and other national associations from all across the country. And what gets policy moving in DC is making it clear that these are initiatives that impact a great number of people from all across the country. We are not a Southeastern centric organization. We look out for all landowners. And so if you eyeball this list, you see New England, Pacific Northwest, Southeast, West Coast, everybody. And so going forward, having these partnerships is a key part to our success, as well as just building inroads with members that could be prospective members of ours, but also people that could just raise awareness about the need for creating a safety net for landowners, as well as partnering on other initiatives that we can work on together. The next slide shows an overview of the legislator support in both the House and the Senate, as well as the associations that support it. Like we saw on the previous slide, more than 32 state forestry associations support this bill, as well as a significant number of members in both the House and the Senate from both sides of the aisle. So as we work on our policy initiatives and try to get our priorities in any germane vehicle, the key to success is expanding our relationships that we have both with members of Congress, but also with outside organizations, so that we can have more people echoing your voice, your needs, and policy solutions that can help make a difference in your operations. And so to turn now to the regulatory side of things, here is Katie Moss, my partner in crime, who handles her work with agencies.
Thanks, Craig. Hi, everybody. As Craig said, my name is Katie Moss, Stewardship Initiatives and Regulatory Affairs here at FLA. And I have been with FLA for almost 4 years now, working on the regulatory side of forest policy. So our goal when we are working with regulators is your freedom of operations through the protection of your private property rights, which are secured through regulatory certainty. And as Scott said earlier in the webinar, regulatory certainty or regulatory stability, we use those terms interchangeably, is your ability to know what regulations impact you as a landowner and how they impact you, and knowing that you can keep your working forests working, healthy, and economically viable, regardless of the regulatory landscape. So what we found, especially in the past decades, is that we can achieve regulatory stability by proactively engaging with partners and policymakers. Really, so much of what private landowners deal with on a day-to-day basis is reactive. You're reacting to market fluctuations, you're reacting to species listings or, air and water regulations. But really, when we engage and collaborate on the front end, it allows us to be proactive in this very reactive space, and have a seat at the table when regulations are being discussed, so that we can minimize unintended consequences of these regulations. And so much of this proactive engagement is education. What agencies may see as well-meaning regulations in the name of climate or species conservation or any number of things can often have the unintended consequence of harming rather than helping by limiting landowner operations and discouraging future collaboration. So when we're working with federal agencies and other regulators, we are talking with them about the importance of flexibility and predictability for landowners in those regulations, while also just really building their understanding about the important contributions that landowners make to society, such as clean air, clean water, healthy wildlife habitat, strong rural economies, wood products, all that great stuff. Landowners really have to be able to effectively manage their land to keep providing these benefits, and they can't do that in an overly strict or unpredictable regulatory environment. It's really a lot easier to create change and foster change from the inside. So when we open up these lines of communication and build relationships and trust with the agencies, It gives FLA and our landowners a seat at the table to help inform and guide the agencies as they are making these decisions. So when we work in the regulatory space, we're typically working with a handful of agencies that make decisions that can impact our landowners. Forest Service at USDA is one, Fish and Wildlife Service at the Department of the Interior, the Environmental Protection Agency, but also working outside of this beltway on some international regulations as well. So we have listed here just a few examples of regulatory issues that we have faced and continue to face with these agencies. For Fish and Wildlife Service, we know that we always have species listings and critical habitat designations in the pipeline. But certainly over the past few administrations, we have also seen a lot of regulatory back and forth, regulatory ping pong, as I like to call it, over the Endangered Species Act regulations themselves, such as processes for, for how critical habitat is determined or how species are listed. So that is definitely an ongoing priority. For the Forest Service, the big topic over the past few years has been old growth, which, although those are actions taking place on federally owned lands, there's always the potential of a trickle-down effect to private landowners, as well as just the general public perception around harvest on what is considered old growth and mature forests. Also, with the Forest Service, there is always discussion happening around wildfire and reforestation efforts, as well as discussion around just how the Forest Service programs and USDA programs in general are being utilized by our landowners and how we can help streamline those processes. With the EPA, excuse me, waters of the U.S. and the National Ambient Air Quality Standards around particulate matter have been big talking points with the EPA over the last couple of years. And then when it comes to international regulations, certainly the European Union deforestation regulations are a constant topic of conversation between FLA and our landowners and our partners right now, just as we're navigating how those requirements for geolocations on wood products being shipped to the EU are impacting landowner operations. And then at FLA, we're also always monitoring regulations that may impact sustainable biomass markets and other international wood markets or international forestry topics. So there is a lot going on in the regulatory space, as you can see, as well as the legislative space. So how are we engaging with these regulators and positioning landowners in a way that they can operate under these regulations? So our strategy is to build relationships with regulatory agencies, as I said, educate them on landowner contributions and needs, and provide the private landowner perspective to inform regulations. But how are we kind of carrying out this strategy? So first, there are timber talks and forest forums. So these are really events that FLA hosts that allow us to just spend time directly with regulatory agency leadership, either in the woods or around the table, to just share private landowner priorities, open up lines of communication, build relationships, and find opportunities to work proactively together to address different issues. This really gives regulators a firsthand look at good stewardship and action on private land, and also provides our landowners with some face-to-face time to share their stories and share how these regulations directly impact their operations. We also share our perspective in other ways. We attend and speak at events with these regulators, as well as with our partners in the forestry and conservation space, to really share what matters most to private landowners and what landowners really need to keep their working forests working. We also share the perspective of our members through Federal Register comments to agency leadership, letters crafted to other regulatory leaders, such as the European Union, roundtables, and all sorts of other opportunities. As I said earlier, just taking advantage of any opportunity to tell regulators about what our landowners do and why they need flexible and predictable regulations. Also, being a resource. Our goal is to position FLA and our landowners as a resource when these regulations are being crafted. We want Fish and Wildlife Service to be able to call us up when they want to see an example of successful red-cockaded woodpecker conservation on privately owned forest land. We want data and feedback from our members to be considered when species are being listed. And so that's why we at FLA, we participate in species status assessments with the Fish and Wildlife Service. That's why we offer these Timber Talk events. That's why we've served on hiring panels for agency leadership that will be working with landowners to give that perspective. And also just providing feedback on species listings and other regulatory actions that we know are in the pipeline. We just really want to position ourselves and our members as a go-to resource for that private landowner perspective. And then another important part of this work is also partnerships and working together with others to broaden our reach on these issues and amplify the voice of the broader forestry community. So we have FLA staff serving on international coalitions and committees regarding wood markets. We've joined several industry letters about domestic and international forestry issues. We're members of the Wildlife Conservation Initiative, the Family Business Coalition, and several more groups that work on issues that are important to our members. We also attend events hosted by our partners in the forestry and conservation communities that give us the opportunity to share the private landowner message with a broader audience and learn more about what others are doing in the space, and just really position FLA to be a proactive partner and, like I said, a go-to resource. So we have talked about the legislative work and the regulatory work, but really the key behind our success is you, the landowner, the forest stakeholder, and your story. Policymakers, both in Congress and at the agencies, they really need to hear from you about the good stewardship taking place on your land and how these policies or regulations are impacting your operations and your viability. Our Set to Go program is basically the grassroots arm of our policy work here at FLA. And through this program, we provide landowners with simple, easy, and effective ways to engage with policymakers. These teams are typically made up of stakeholders throughout the forestry supply chain, predominantly landowners, but also seedling providers, log and mill operators, manufacturers, academia, just a broad range of forest stakeholders that stay plugged in to our legislative and regulatory work here at FLA and are also just at the ready to engage and advocate on issues that are important to the forestry community. Engagement through our Set to Go program can take many different forms. It can be as simple as sending an email to your member of Congress or a potential partner about the Disaster Reforestation Act. It could also be attending a timber talk in your state, or setting up an in-person meeting with your member of Congress during August recess, or giving testimony at a Farm Bill listening session in your state, or providing a quote or data for us to use when we talk to policymakers and regulators. But at the end of the day, these teams are just really vital to the success of our policy work here at FLA because, like I said, policymakers, they really want to hear from you, and your voice can have the most impact to help us advance a pro-private forest landowner agenda. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you can join a Set to Go team later in the webinar, but for now, going hand in hand with our legislative and regulatory work is our work to strengthen market opportunities for our landowners. So I will turn it over to Michelle to talk more about that.
Hello, everybody. I am Michelle Kane, Director of Communications for FLA and FLF. And you're probably wondering how that translates to me being in charge of the Markets Committee. Well, I'll explain that to you in just a second. So the reason I am the liaison is because one of the most important parts about markets is communicating opportunities with them. So our main focus of our Markets Committee is really working to identify and understand significant new market opportunities and changes to existing markets. And we do that by focusing on 4 major areas. The first is emerging and existing markets. So when I say that, we're talking about things like mass timber, pellets, lumber, mostly things that are associated with traditional wood products or markets that have been around for a significant amount of time. Next, one of our focus areas is carbon and climate. As a landowner, I'm sure you've heard a lot carbon programs in the last few years. And our job is to make sure that you're informed and educated about how these programs work, if there's something that is going to fit into your management plan, and to really share that information with you and make sure as well that the public understands how this. The next focus area is ecosystem markets. And a lot of these are still emerging. So you'll see that we've broken these out because they are very specific. Things like fire protection management, biodiversity, water. Those are things that we're keeping an eye on and communicating to our membership as well. And then our last focus area right now is assurance and sustainability. And this is our really big project at the moment. Our market committee is working along with foundation staff. We were given a grant to work on this. And the goal of this is really at the end, we will have this amazing online tool that allows you to see all the effects of forests in your community. You can see forest health, you'll be able to see economic, environmental impacts, and really show how sustainable private forest lands are across the nation. And on that note, I'm going to pass this over to Lauren to explain more about the foundation and the projects that they are working on right now.
Thank you, Michelle. My name is Lauren Ward, and I am the president of the Forest Landowners Foundation. I've been in this role since October, but I have worked a lot in the past with landowners, including on staff at the association. It's a great time to be engaged with the foundation right now. The foundation has been a strong partner of FLA for many years. It was founded originally as a way to fund scholarships for forestry students, and to fund discrete projects that were just kind of one project at a time. But over the past several years, thanks to those who were leading the foundation prior to when I came on board, the foundation has grown beyond scholarships and projects. And today we've grown into a strong organization that really has the ability to act as a strategic partner for FLA, working very closely together. And I think you'll see as we move forward with explaining some of what the foundation does, that both of these organizations, the association and the foundation, are working toward very similar goals. And you can see here our vision at the foundation is to create a thriving future for forests and the landowners who sustain them, because we know that these are the forests and the landowners are the stewards who cultivate these forests to meet America's economic, social, and ecological needs. We're the only foundation that is dedicated to supporting the forest landowner. We're really focused on the people because we know without those forest landowners, then we won't have the forests. And while FLA works towards some of these similar goals through advocacy on the Hill and collaborative engagement with regulators, the foundation provides a tax-friendly way for FLA members and other partners to support the work that the foundation does to educate, engage, communicate, gather data, gather stories, and other tools that we leverage for our landowners on their behalf. So where does the foundation focus its resources to advance our goal of supporting forest landowners? We have 3 focal areas where we're having an impact on the ground. The first one is telling the story of America's forest landowners. You've already heard a lot about this on the association side. Katie is talking to regulators on landowners' behalf. Craig and Scott are talking to legislators and other stakeholders in our community about forest landowners and telling your story. The foundation contributes to this really by gathering that data, putting the numbers behind some of the stories that we know are true. We take a really proactive approach to try to anticipate the questions that are going to be asked in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, so that our community already has those answers and those stories ready to deliver to the audiences that need to hear them. So one of the projects that we're doing under this focal area is the grant that Michelle was referencing a few moments ago. We actually have 2 grants from the Forest Service that kind of work together hand in hand, where we're telling the story of sustainability of our private forests and our private forest landowners in the US to the audiences that need to hear it the most. Instead of talking in our own echo chamber to each other about how sustainable we are, we all know what's really going on the ground in these private forests. We're trying to take this message to audiences who are not necessarily as familiar. So audiences that are concerned about environmental, social, and governance values, or ESG. And also, audiences who are proponents of the European Union's deforestation regulation, EUDR. So we're coming up with reports, messaging. We're placing articles in the media that target these specific audiences and tell your story in a way that those audiences will understand it. And then on the other side of the project, we're also developing the online tool that Michelle referenced, where it will be an interactive map that shows various data points of sustainability, so that we can show forests in the US are being managed sustainably, even if they're not participating in one of the third-party certification programs. The next area where we focus our energy is to provide tools for forest landowners to be successful. We are involved in a partnership with Auburn University to continue to expand the costs and trends of forestry practices survey. Right now, that is primarily focused in the Southeast, but we have been talking about expanding it to other areas. If you are a subscriber to the Forest Landowners magazine, you will have seen this report on an every other year basis published in our magazine. And most recently, we did have a grant that allowed us to provide the summary results of how much it costs to do prescribed fire, to do site prep, to plant by hand or by machine. We have all of that information in an online tool where landowners can go in and explore that. So we're really trying to provide tools that are useful to landowners. And then the third area where we focus our attention really is to prepare the next generation of future forestry leaders. We look out there and we are so glad to have individuals like Katie, Craig, Scott, Michelle, and many other leaders in our community who speak on behalf of the forestry sector and private forest landowners. But what are we doing today to prepare that next generation to follow in the footsteps of many of these leaders? A lot of forestry students who are in forestry school, or maybe they're getting a master's or a PhD in forestry. There are a lot of requirements that they go through in their curriculum, but they don't necessarily get all of the skills that they need to go to Capitol Hill and to be able to advocate on behalf of themselves, their community, and forest landowners. They don't get the opportunity to learn how to be a leader in their community, to speak in front of a group, and to really gain that experience of hands-on learning in the real world of policy and advocacy, but also of engagement and education and communication. So we have a couple of programs where we do offer these experiences to our next generation, our students. One you can see in the picture here is called the Forest Policy Institute. This year, we brought 12 forestry students from across the country to Washington, D.C. during the association's board meeting fly-in. And those students got the opportunity to meet people from the administration, to meet some of our partners who are other nationwide associations like AFNPA, some of our partners that work with us on our regulatory affairs like the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And we really exposed them firsthand to what this work looks like that FLA does. And then they get to attend the board meeting and they get paired up with a board member who will walk into their member of Congress's office with them. And they get that hands-on experience of talking to their own member of Congress, their own senator, about what they're doing, about why they're interested in forestry, and about the issues that affect them the most. The other program that we are working on as well here is we're bringing National Forest Products Week to college campuses. So we partner with universities across the country to curate events and education and outreach throughout National Forest Products Week on those college campuses. We're really handing the leadership over to the students here. they're tabling on their campus, a philosophy major walks by, a math major walks by, and they get the opportunity to practice saying, why are forest products important? Why is wood good? Why should we be using a paper grocery bag instead of a plastic one? And they also curate these panels where they have professors and some of our other partners from the forest industry come and talk to a group of students about National Forest Products Week. So it really does give them the opportunity to learn, but also to build their skill set as leaders in this community. So those are some of the things that we have going on this year with the foundation. I invite you all to become more involved, and we look forward to taking any questions you have about the foundation at the end.
Thank you, Lauren. I'm now going to go into a little bit more about how you can get the most out of your membership. So you're already doing that now. If you're already an FLA member and you are on this landowner learning session, you're already taking one step to get the most out of your membership. If you're not a member yet, we would love to have you, and we'll follow up with you with this in a recording, an email, and as well as more information on membership. But we do these online learning sessions roughly about 6 to 7 times a year on various different market opportunities, about our policy work. It just really depends on what is needed at the time. And you can find all of the past recordings as well on our website. Another way to really get the most out of your membership is using this network of private forest landowners that FLA creates for you. So whether that is going to a timber talk or meeting up locally with somebody that's a member and just kind of picking their brain and realizing that they may have some ideas to help you. One of the most valuable parts of membership is networking with other private forest landowners across the nation. And then, of course, in-person meetings. Katie talked about Timber Talks and Forest Forum. Amy's going to talk more about the conference and what that entails. But really, these in-person meetings are not only times to really learn more about markets, about sustainability, about all of these great topics, but also a really great time to get to know fellow FLA members across the nation.
Yeah, and then another way that you can get the most out of your membership with FLA is by joining one of our state or regional engagement teams under our Set to Go program. You do not have to be a policy expert to be on one of these teams. We really want to provide the tools to make it as easy as possible for you to be an advocate on behalf of private forest landowners in your state and nationwide. We currently have 13 active teams that encompass 22 states across the nation. And on those teams, we have around 175 engagement team members. So if you'd like to learn more about our Set to Go program and our grassroots advocacy work, we have a really great grassroots engagement webpage with a lot more information. If you'd like to join an engagement team, please contact me and I will get you on our email list. And if you want to be more involved in our policy work, but you don't see your state or region on our active team list here, please don't let that stop you. We are always looking for opportunities to expand the program and get more states involved so we can make it happen. Just reach out.
Thanks, Katie. Appreciate it. And you can see here that Katie's email is at the bottom. All you need to do is send her an email and tell her you're interested in joining a Set to Go team, and she'll get you all set up. So another way is just to stay connected. And right now, if you're an FLA member, you know that you get Forest Landowner Magazine 6 times a year right to your mailbox. And it is an amazing resource that is put together. It gives you anything from what we are doing for policy work from the foundation to just great information about anything that can help you manage land. Additionally, FLA Focus is our e-newsletter that goes out monthly. If you are not a member, but you would like to get that, you can subscribe, and we send that out around the 20th each month. And the great thing about Focus is it's not just a pouring out of news about forestry. What we really do is tell you the work we're doing to ensure your economic success as a private forest landowner. We show you where we've been, what we're doing, everything that's going on, as well as resources to different events. And then we do have social media. We're on Twitter or X, whichever you choose to call it at this time, LinkedIn and Facebook. And on there, we share a lot of information about Focus, about where we're going to be. If we're coming to a conference, if one of our staff is going to a conference, we like to put that on there and say, hey, come up to us, let's talk, let's form a connection. And that's a really good way for you to see where we'll be, and if you'll be there too, to go ahead and meet up. So another great way to stay connected is the conference, and I'm going to pass it on over to Amy.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm Amy Palmer. I'm the Director of Administration for the Forest Landowners Association. I've been with FLA for about 7 years, and along with handling the operations on the administrative side of FLA, I do coordinate the annual national conference. So I want to take this time to invite you to attend the 2024 National Conference of Private Forest Landowners, June 25th and 26th in beautiful Colorado, at the Omni Interlaken Hotel in Broomfield. It's just north of downtown Denver. And this is an exclusive event and offers a very unique opportunity to engage with fellow landowners who share your management philosophies, challenges, and aspirations. Whether you manage 100 or 100,000 acres, our conference provides an ideal platform to engage in meaningful conversations with landowners like yourself. The program we have lined up is an impressive group of speakers and panel discussions over a range of topics. You'll find the full conference agenda on the forestlandowners.com website. If you are considering an FLA membership, I'd like to extend to you the member rate for the conference registration and an additional 50% discount on your first year of membership dues. You can email me at apalmer@forestlandowners.com to accept this offer, and that offer will end on May 17th. I look forward to seeing you all at the conference.
Well, thank you all. You just heard from an amazing group that we have put together here at the association, at the foundation. Your dues, to the association, your contributions to the foundation make this possible. So they're not only appreciated, but they're vital to continue the work that you just heard today. Katie made a very good point, and I'm just going to emphasize it one more time again here before we close up, is that we have a great team assembled here, and they do great work. They get up every day working to ensure success, your success of your ownership of your land. But we can't be successful without you. We have to have you engaged and involved. We have to have your voice. Your voice is what gets us across the finish line, which gets this agenda that we have, this pro-private forest landowner agenda, across the finish line, and help ensure the success of your forest land for today and for future generations. So I encourage you, if you found this webinar useful, it will be shared to you after the webinar, to all the attendees who registered. It will also be posted on our website. Don't keep it to yourself, share it with somebody. That's how we're going to grow the association. That's how we're going to make sure that we have the necessary funding to keep a staff like this going and do more good work on your behalf. So thank you all that are members. Please call on us if you're not a member. If you know someone who's interested in membership, we'd love to talk to you. You can start with Amy. She'll get you in the right place. And we'd love to hear from you. We might have a minute or two left here before the top of the hour. So if there are any questions, I would encourage you just to put it in the Q&A section or the chat box, either one. It doesn't really matter. If you have something that's on your mind, you say, hey, Scott, or anyone on the FLA team, I didn't hear you cover this, or I was unclear about something you said, just post it down there in the Q&A or chat, and we'll be sure to address it. And we'll give everybody just a minute to do so. It was mentioned several times, but the easiest way to connect with us is to go to forestlandowners.com. It's easy to navigate from there. All the main reasons you'd probably be going to the website are listed right there on the homepage. You can just click on one of those buttons and dive a little bit deeper and find out more about the association. Also, all of our webinar series, our landowner learning series webinars are archived on the website. and you're welcome to go there at your convenience and view those. I'm not seeing any questions, so I will thank you all again for your attendance today, for your support of both the association and the foundation. I hope you were just as impressed with the presentations from the team as I was. Thank you all for your support, and take care.